Welcome to the Continental. We hope you enjoy your stay.
Welcome to the Continental. I'm your host, Adam Mack, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about one of my all-time favorite science fiction TV series and franchises. I thought it'd be a good idea to start with this series because it level sets and provides a baseline for you, the audience and listeners, to understand why science fiction is such a pillar of the Continental podcast. Personally, it's created such an impression on who I am, not only as a child, but now as I've learned as an adult. I thought it'd be great to help you understand what has driven me to love science fiction so much. So, can you guess which science fiction series I'm going to talk about? Is there anything here that can tell you what might be of interest to me? I will say that there are certain franchises that have better merchandising than others. So that'll be for another podcast. How about this? Let's start with this description. Imagine a 10-year-old Adam Max sitting in front of the TV, anxiously waiting for his favorite show to start. And then he hears the words, space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Okay, I think you get the point. I'm sure you can find that introduction on the internet really easily. But if you don't know already, my all-time favorite science fiction series is Star Trek, The Next Generation, and the Star Trek universe as a whole, but definitely Next Generation is my all-time favorite one. Started by Gene Roddenberry with the original Star Trek series, Star Trek, The Next Generation, which began in 1987 to 1994, was a hit show that really changed people's minds. Now, for me, I only got into it at the age of 10 back in 1992. So I actually watched a lot of syndicated episodes and basically binge watched episode after episode after episode. And as a child, I loved it. It was incredible. It was great. But I look back on it now and I see that it's not only just as a child I loved it, and as a child it created an interest in everything that I hold dear, really being related to science fiction. But now, as an adult and somebody who's grown up with Star Trek, I understand that it's changed how I actually perceive life, how I treat life, and how I act in our community today. And that's a very important lesson that I hope to explain to you why Star Trek The Next Generation is not only just my all-time favorite series, but it's also a pivotal series in the last 50 years of television media. So let me start with, what does Star Trek The Next Generation represent to me as a child? What interested me about it? How did I get so hooked? Well, first off, Star Trek The Next Generation represented the future. It represented the endless possibilities that are available to humanity if we come together. And it presented it on a day-to-day basis through its technology that it showed of the future, B, the characters that were across the board incredible, had all different personalities and came from all walks of life as well as different races and species. And 3, the day-to-day episodes that focused on problem solving and finding the answer together and coming together as a team to solve not only just what the ship faced, but what the entire United Federation of Planets as well as Starfleet faced on a day-to-day basis. Incredible show. And I'd like to just go over some of what impressed me as a kid and definitely attracted me to that show and defined my life in science fiction. From a technology perspective, think about it. The ability to talk to a computer and ask it in thin air where somebody was located, what's the status of something, incredible. You had your medical and scientific tricorders, such as such as something like this, that you could use on a landing party to see what's happening in the world that you've landed on. You had your phasers, you had your photon torpedoes to protect yourself against any enemies that you came across, or was that, but only those that threatened you and not to be the threatener. And of course you had the incredible Starship Enterprise, sleek, beautiful, going at warp speed. I can still to this day hear Captain Picard, the captain, saying, "Warp 9, engage." And as a kid, you know, you dream of the art of the possible. You dream of the future, and that show personified that through the technology that it shared on a day-to-day basis. And I can't count the number of times where I pretended to have a phaser, or I pretended to be on the Starship Enterprise going on warp speed and being that pilot. You wanted that future to be real, and it was incredible to have that representation in my life. The second reason why as a kid this was so important to me was the characters. Every character was unique and incredible and personified a personality that was not only just enticing to follow, but and mimic, but also just to see them work together and come together to solve problems, even though they were all completely different from each other. All their personalities were unique, but they were all coming together for the common goal of problem solving and the success of the United Federation of Planets. You had Captain Picard, the stoic but calm, strong leader that led the crew. He was actually also a non-standard leading character in that during that time. Think about this. This is over 30 years ago that older, bald, actor was playing the lead character for an entire crew. That's incredible, and it represented the future well, that anybody could be in command. You had Commander Riker, the young up-and-coming commander who, would always take charge for the away teams. You had Lieutenant Commander Data, the android life form, who I outright loved. He was not only was he stronger, faster, smarter, but he had the always dream of wanting to be more human. So he never stopped trying to learn, never stopped trying to be better for the crew and his friends. In fact, heck, I dressed up as Data on Halloween once. I literally painted myself all white to match Data, even though it was painful to clean off the next day. My mother was awesome. She created this custom Data uniform for me, and I'll always be grateful. But Data was an inspiration in terms of his dedication to his friends, his crew, and to his search for humanity. You had Dr. Beverly Crusher, who balanced life between being a mother and the best doctor on the ship. You had Counselor and later Commander Troy, who was a ship's counselor, who was the emotional pulse of the organization. She's a betazoid who could empathically read the emotions of all those who are around, and it was everybody's anchor. You had Geordie LaForge, the chief engineer, who was born blind, except that he could see more than anybody else with the help of technology, showing you how technology can not only just help us explore the future, but also help us overcome any of our own personal hurdles. And of course, you had Lieutenant Worf, the chief security officer, who's a Klingon, but who he himself had a core relationship of conflict between being a Klingon by nature, but also being raised by humans and trying to find an answer to it all. So they're all different across the board, yet they were shown day after day, episode after episode, being able to come together and solve problems. And that representation of the future, that representation of humanity and the efforts across, that's what attracted me to them. They could all be themselves, but they would not come into conflict with each other, because they were after a bigger goal, which is to solve the problem at hand and protect the United Federation of Planets. Incredible. Obviously, the third thing, you can't deny it, was the episodes. Unlike today, where most episodes are built around a single season, Star Trek The Next Generation had individual episodes that were individually contained. You didn't have episodes carrying on for multiple episodes to try to build a climax for a penultimate and ultimate episode at the season finale. No. They did have some cliffhangers, but only for 2 episodes. Everything else was, every episode was its own story, whether it was a character development, or whether it was a Federation development, or whether it was just all around problem solving across the ship. Sometimes you would get a holodeck, virtual computer image taking over the ship to try to beat Data in a game of Sherlock Holmes. Sometimes the Enterprise had to solve a problem where a space alien baby thought the Enterprise was its mother and needed milk from the Enterprise. Heck, you even had instances where the Doctor falls in love with a ghost, a spirit, who's really just an alien energy that was contained within a candle. They did everything. The idea was the team came together to solve the problem together with the resources they had in front of them. Nobody was above anybody. Everybody worked together to find the answer necessary. And as a kid, seeing that day-to-day success was pivotal. And I always wanted to go back and see, hey, what story are they going to run to next, and what's going to be successful for them. To this day, I look back on it from a childhood perspective, and I am very grateful to have seen all that technology to drive my interest in computers and technology and engineering, all the harmony as well as the growth of all the characters. Geordie LaForge being an engineer, I think it also pushed me to also want to be an engineer as well, and that helped me build a career path for myself. And then obviously the episodes, the day-to-day success of problem solving, as well as the lessons that come with the problem solving and that you can overcome anything as a team, was incredible. But as we age, as we've grown over the 20 years since Star Trek The Next Generation finished, I didn't realize until only recently that Star Trek The Next Generation wasn't just about the day-to-day episodes and the characters and the technology. It was actually about enabling the vision of its creator, Gene Roddenberry. Okay, and I only found that out recently when Jonathan Frakes, the actor who played Commander William Riker on Star Trek, provided a little bit of an anecdote of what Gene Roddenberry told him after he had won the role of Commander Riker. And Gene Roddenberry had said that about his vision for Star Trek and what the purpose is. Gene Roddenberry said, his vision of the 24th century is one that does not have any sexism. There is no racism. There will be no hunger, and nobody will be in need, and all children will be able to read. Hearing that is extremely powerful. It was only recently released in May 2020. As as of today, there is a lot of social unrest as the world grapples with trying to create a more equal and equitable place, trying to reduce the amount of social injustices and hopefully eliminate it. It's being called out finally, and it's being hopefully addressed on a daily basis, and it should not stop, because there is a future where there is no racism, no sexism, and there will be, nobody will go hungry, and nobody will be in need, and all children will be able to read. Gene Roddenberry has planted that vision with us. It is possible. And why do I know it's possible? That his vision is possible. And this is where, as an adult, I finally understand what the real purpose of Star Trek Next Generation is and what it's done to me and helped me grow to be an adult. 30 years ago, Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek Next Generation started this discussion, but they were teaching, not just doing episodes, they were teaching these lessons of how to find ways to get to a common unified world through the universe of Star Trek The Next Generation. Starting with the episodes. Every episode, yes, it was about problem solving amongst the crew, but what it was representing a world where you can get the best out of a situation and solve any problem as a team, where everybody is represented, and if everybody chips in and brings their A game, we can all solve this problem together. So there should be no problem that we could not solve together. We can eradicate social injustice. We can eradicate racism and sexism if we choose to as humanity. And he showed that through the episodes, and the ones that really impacted me the most, I want to bring up, because it helped me understand that as I've grown up, I've actually grown up learning these lessons, and it's become a tenet of my life. First, Season 2, episode 9. Season 2, episode 9, called Measure of a Man. In this episode, Lieutenant Commander Data is being brought in by Starfleet. They want to take him into a lab, tear him apart, figure out how he works, and be able to multiply him by the thousands. He's stronger, faster, smarter than any human could possibly be, and he doesn't even have emotions. So they're like, well, it'd be for the greater good to be able to make thousands more like him. However, Captain Picard was like, that's is not the right thing to do. Lieutenant Commander Data is not just my crew member, but he's also my friend, and he is a species to himself. He is a life form to himself. If we can't even treat a singular life form with respect and give them the rights and dignity they deserve as an individual, how can you expect to treat anybody else or entire population or entire race with respect and dignity? You'll end up treating them like property, or in the worst case, like slaves. And that is not what we do or what we should be doing as humans. If you fall down that slippery slope, we've seen it in our history. It can go way, 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 way further. And we do not want to get to that point again, or we want to try to dig ourselves out of it. Incredible. And that taught me about respecting each person's right to exist and live, and respecting each person as their own person. The second episode is season 5, episode 23, Iborg. Now, the Borg is a species that is the foil of the United Federation of Planets. They are a singular mind that basically goes around the universe, attacking and absorbing different species and essentially assimilating them into their single collective. Their thought is that one mind, one purpose. I don't care if you're an individual or not, your culture doesn't exist. You are just the Borg. Whereas the United Federation of Planets, the basis behind Star Trek, is about everybody is unique, everybody has a place, and everybody deserves to live and exist. Well, in Iborg, the Enterprise found a lone Borg drone stranded on a planet, saved him, and were hoping to use him as a weapon against the Borg because the Borg were relentless. However, in caring for this Borg, they ended up naming him Hugh, but not only just naming him, the Borg identified himself as Hugh. That's because being around humanity, being around the individuals of the United Federation of Planet, as well as the Starship Enterprise, helped awaken a reminder of the strength of his individual thoughts. This Borg decided to be an individual and realize that he could be an individual regardless of how loud the Borg collective would speak. So that taught me that everybody can be their own individual. It doesn't matter how large a group you're part of. You deserve to have your own thoughts, and you should be able to state it when necessary, when you believe in it. And that's something that I've tried to live by and tried to believe in, when approaching different situations. The third episode of interest, you should really check these out. They're obviously on Netflix and all over the internet. But season 6, episode 25, Timescape. Now, this episode doesn't have the usual existential questions that the last two had, but it had something just as valuable, which is problem solving. Problem solving by looking beyond the beyond. So in this particular scenario, Captain Picard, Counselor Troy, and Lieutenant Commander Data come back to the Enterprise that is seemingly frozen in time and locked in a battle between the Romulan Warbird and the Starship Enterprise. And it looks like there's some big trouble going on. However, they didn't jump to conclusions. They transported onto the Starship Enterprise, assessed the situation, and they came to the realization that not everything was what it was. There was something different about this scenario, and it turns out the Starship Enterprise was actually on its way to rescue the Romulan Warbird who had been stranded in space because they had come across some time aliens that had gotten stuck in the Romulan Warbird. So if they had reacted right away, they could have blown up the Romulan Warbird and the Romulans, as well as the time aliens, and they wouldn't have gone on without the wiser. However, you have to look beyond what the initial problem is, beyond your first reaction. Take the time to analyze all the data, figure out what's right and what's potentially the correct course of action. And they work together as a team across the entire ship to solve the problem and save not only just the Starship Enterprise, but also the Romulan warship, as well as the time aliens. I love that episode. It was just the like a clear example of problem solving, but to the next level. The last episode that I think you should check out, and I think it's a great representation of Gene Roddenberry's first couple of desires for the future, is Thine Own Self. Season 7, episode 16. In Thine Own Self, which is primarily a data driven episode where he's marooned on a planet where he's lost his memory, and this planet's inhabitants thought he was some kind of ice creature. It's the primary reason for the episode, but I think it's actually a secondary storyline. It's important though, because it's an example of you can't judge a book by its cover. Just because Data is different than the inhabitants of that planet doesn't mean he was there to cause them any harm. In fact, he was trying to save them, but they still attacked him. Fortunately, the Enterprise was able to save him and repair him. But in the end, that planet inhabitants realized that he saved them, and they regretted their actions. But I thought the main lesson from this episode was something related to Commander Troy. Commander Troy, who was formerly Counselor Troy, was taking the exams to be a commanding officer on the Starship Enterprise. She was able to fly through the academic courses, no problem, but she had a little bit of a hiccup in the practical exam, and it was she wasn't able to save the ship in this simulation. What she learned though is, as a commander, you have to reach a point where the ship and the crew have to outweigh your own personal feelings, which is the hardest thing to do. How do you fight your own personal feelings? But when you have a duty and responsibility as a commanding officer, you have to make the right decision for all. And in this case, she had to send a simulated friend, Geordi LaForge, her friend Geordi LaForge, to his certain death, because she knew that him fixing the engines would save the ship, but mean his certain death. And that's the hardest thing to do. What I liked about that episode was it represented not only females in positions of power and strength, but also females in the ability to make decisions, because we know they can already. And this was 30 years ago. Star Trek was breaking the barriers, making females the lead. And we see that today in the newer episodes, where females are represented as equals on that Star Trek universe. And that's what's needed. That's what needs to be represented today more than ever. Not only just females, but all people of all races. It needs to be level set and represented across the board, because it helped me understand, seeing all that in the episodes, treating people equally, understanding you're an individual, problem solving, looking beyond the beyond, and understanding that everybody can make the right decision. It level set for me what it meant for the future, what I should be expecting out of my friends, out of my family, out of the coworkers that I work with on a day-to-day basis. Everybody can contribute to the success of the community. And that is the power of Star Trek The Next Generation and the episodes that they presented. Now, that was even taken one step further with the characters as well. The characters themselves, as I mentioned, are all unique personalities, all dealing with their own cultural upbringing, as well as being different from each other. But that was the beauty of it. They were all unique characters, all from different backgrounds, all with different assets to bring to the United Federation of Planets and the Starship Enterprise. And they brought it together as a team. They didn't disagree on a personal basis. They had a grander mission. And that's, I realized, set the bar for me for what should be normal in today's world. We should all be striving towards, that everybody in every way can bring success to the Starship Enterprise, or in this case, the world. And it's something that lives with me today, and I realize that it has helped me with my approach to the rest of the world. I didn't even know it. And lastly, of course, the technology. I don't even think I need to mention, but the technology is here today. That stuff we saw 25 years ago is already making its way into our day-to-day lives. See that tricorder I was showing you? Well, doesn't it look familiar with something here from 2000? The little flip phone? Yeah, it might have just been phone numbers and games, but what about the smartphone? Yep, this thing has 50 different ways of helping you in your life and simplifying and automating your life. That's the transition of the technology that we've seen. What about talking to a computer? Where do we see that? Oh, computer, when's the next Raptors game?
This might answer your question. Tomorrow, the Raptors will play the Celtics at 6:30 p.m.
There you go. We the North, let's go Raptors. But the voice activated technology is already here today. What else is there? You have your tablets and your PCs. It's mobile computing on the move. It's already here. And I can tell you right now, although I haven't invented anything, but if you ask any of those inventors who made, the phone, they were using this tricorder as an example. The communication devices that were on the chests of the officers that are easily accessible now in like smartwatches, that's driven by and inspired by Star Trek The Next Generation and the Star Trek series to believe that the future is capable, it can be now. Yes, it's taken time, but they work towards it with that vision in mind, and Star Trek The Next Generation help inspire that. Now, if they can do that with technology, and if we can do that with show that with characters and treat people little by little equal, why can't the rest of Gene Roddenberry's dream also be achieved? Take his characters, the Starship Enterprise crew. They're all different people representing all walks of life. Let's bring that to the rest to society today. Everybody we come across, they are equally strong, equally incredible, have their own equal stories that make them who they are and can help change this world. What about those episodes? Being able to problem solve amongst the whole community, come together for a common goal of overcoming the hurdles that are in front of us, not worrying about what's in it for me. You're in it for the United Federation of Planets. That is the vision that should guide our lives as adults, as we grow up, as we move through not only just this world, but potentially space, thanks to like SpaceX, but also boldly go what's in your mind as well and expand that. Let's together work together to achieve Gene Roddenberry's vision, because the 24th century is just around the corner, and in the 24th century and hopefully sooner, there the goal is, remember, we don't want any sexism. There is no racism that we want. There will be no hunger, and nobody will be in need, and every child will be able to read. I ask you, let's do this together as a community, as a planet, as a human race, because we can. We've already been given the foundation and the path to do so 30 years ago by Star Trek The Next Generation, so that we could boldly go where no one has gone before. So let's start representing the future today and for tomorrow. Thank you for staying at the Continental. As always, I appreciate your visits. Please like, subscribe, and comment anything that you like. Even if you have any questions, or give me your stories about Star Trek. I would love to hear about it. Thank you for having us in your day, and please come back to the Continental.